we can get everybody to take a seat, we'll get started. I'm not sure where Miss Arts is, but we'll.
Still going on.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, and this is a third budget workshop, and tonight, Tim, we need to. I mean, after we do all of our discussion, and hopefully we need to give him some clear guidance on how to proceed with balancing the budget, what amounts we want to use as far as ad valorem. Whatever we set tonight, we can go down, but we can't go up, so just keep that in mind. And he and I know he was at work working on it till about 9:30, 10 o'clock last night. He and I spent all day today revising that and working on it, and I know y'all have also spoke with him, and we can proceed from there. So Tim, tell us where we need to go next.
Well, Commissioner, I'll start with a brief PowerPoint, so forgive me, I haven't really had a chance to view this or comment on it, so I'm going to trust Will that we've got all the good information in there. So I'll try to walk you through the item and the PowerPoint. Basically, Commissioners, where we're at is this is your third budget workshop in development of budget work and developing the 11-12 budget. We've had two other workshops before. You've given me some direction to move forward with. This is my last opportunity to meet with you and discuss the budget before it is due on your desk on July 15th. So tonight I'm going to be presenting to you a draft budget, and I'll highlight that this is a draft budget. We are still working out some issues. We are still waiting for some estimates to come in from the state. So this is not final by any means, but we're getting pretty close. I know we were supposed to talk about some CIP issues as well. We're still working on a lot of those budgets. Some of the other budgets are based on fee revenue. They're either grants or they're fee revenue, like our court funds and all that stuff. So we're still working those out. And they are what they are. They'll be what the fees are going to be. So there's really not a whole lot of input that I need from you on that. And like I said, after July 15th, the budget will be yours, and any changes you want to make are certainly at your discretion. So anyway, quickly, this is a budget percentage for FY 11-12 based on how it breaks out by constitutional office. We're considering BOC as a constitutional office, which it is. Good, we'll go to the next slide. Where are we at with our ad valorem? And just kind of a general fund revenue highlight. Based on the property appraiser's June 1st estimate, we're looking at a 9.5% reduction in our ad valorem. With a millage rate, as I've been directed in previous workshops, to keep at 8.75, we're looking at $949,053 reduction in revenue from ad valorem. Appropriated cash forward, there is none. We're not appropriating any cash forward this year. So we're going to live with the revenues that we generate.
And before we get off the slide, Tim, how much appropriated cash forward do we have in this year's budget?
$210,000.
And then we also had $500,000 from the jail bed revenue also.
Yes.
So $710,000 of this year's budget was appropriated cash forward, and we're not doing that, so it has to be found.
Absolutely, yes.
How much was the year before that?
It was, I think it was $840,000, $47,000.
Spending money out of the
Right.
savings account.
Yeah.
I just want, when we're making cuts later, we're not only cutting $949,000, but we're also cutting the $700,000
Non-reoccurring revenues.
The non-recurring.
absolutely.
So it's so just so everybody knows where these budget cuts that we're discussing are coming from.
Yes.
And putting $500,000 in the fund balance or reserve is another $500,000 that we have to find or cut.
Yes. Yes.
So we're over $2 million.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to highlight that this budget is not built on any fund balance or cash forward. Go ahead, Will. Also, we're budgeting our jail bed revenue at conservative limits. We've also deducted the 10% that we said we would in order to start building back up the rainy day fund at the sheriff's office. Planning and zoning fees, we've pretty much knocked them down to as low as they could possibly go. We're not seeing those revenues coming in. There's not a lot of activity going on. So we're going to be knocking those down pretty far. Good, Will. Fiscally constrained funding, thank God. I talked to the state yesterday. It looks like that's not changed. You know, the legislature did not touch our Amendment 1 offset, which is about $25 million. Last year, I think we collected over $1 million. We were assured that that hasn't been affected and that should not affect our draw this year. So That's some good news, bright spot in the whole budget picture. Estate revenues, I've gotten some of them. I haven't gotten all of them. What ones I've had, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in, so I've been pretty conservative in knocking them down to, a reasonable level. One of them, just to me, was just completely outrageous. So I don't know what they're doing up at the state, but it doesn't seem like they're hitting the mark. Good, well. Let's talk about the increases. There's not a whole lot of them. There's about 3. General admin budget has gone up 23%, and that is directly resulting in us putting in, this is where we budget your reserve. So that $500,000 increase, 23% increase is the $500,000 or $370,000 we're adding onto your reserve. So at the end of the year, hopefully that'll just fall to your fund balance. There was an increase in the supervisor elections budget. He's got a budget 2 election cycles next year. Obviously that incurs costs, and that's going to be increasing his budget. We've also set up a department for the community center. We've been kind of up in the air where we are going with the community center. We still haven't hammered out those issues yet. We're in negotiations with YMCA, but fully operational, the building costs money. AC, electricity, phone. We're going to have volunteer Wakulla in there, and we're going to have the Y in there. There's going to be some operational costs. We haven't worked out what they're going to be, but I didn't want to be irresponsible and not budget anything because there will be costs. Even just have it sit and vacant, there's costs every day. So we set up a department, and we based it on when the clerk was fully in that office or the courts were fully in those buildings. We averaged about 20, based on the electric utility bills that we had, we averaged about 24,000, 25,000. So we set up a budget for that. That's subject to change based on, like I said, another outlying circumstances. Additional decrease. In the general fund, we were able to cut $703,000, or 3.5% lower than last year. We were actually cut over $1 million, but like I said, we put $370,000 in your reserve, which is budgeted. So the actual cuts you're going to see in expenditures is only $703,000, but it was over $1 million that we actually cut in expenditures in order to fund putting that money in a reserve. County administrator's budget was decreased by 9.32%. That's directly related to personnel costs. Sheriff's office was able to eliminate 7 FTEs. Their budget went down by 3.8%. Clerk's office went down by 5%. Tax collectors was 2%, and then property appraiser contributed another 3% reduction. Planning and zoning was decreased by 25%. Public library was able to reduce $40,000 out of their budget. Facilities management decreased by $18,000. That's directly related to eliminating the OPS position we had there that we never filled. Office and management budget, 32% decrease. There was a position released in there, reduction there. Parks and Recreation was able to reduce their budget by $43,000. Emergency medical services, we were able to reduce their budget by $318,000. We've eliminated the public safety director position. We've also eliminated a paramedic position. Animal control was able to decrease their budget by $15,000. So like I said before, the general fund, total general fund expenditures decreased by over $1 million. Just the BOCSC alone, we were able to reduce $617,000 or 8.85% from the previous fiscal year. The Constitutionals contributed another $456,000 in reductions, or 3.57 in total. But that still leaves a funding gap of $409,629 between revenues and expenditures that we're looking for your guidance on how to fill. Like we list through the agenda item, there's some ideas or discussion items that we would like to discuss in order to fill that gap. First is your line item funding to your outside agencies. So these are all areas that we could look at to reduce. Staff furloughs, again, they're tough. I don't enjoy them, but they're an option. You can increase your employee participation in your health care premiums. We haven't done that. We didn't last year. We were anticipating an increase this year. We're looking at alternatives. We're hoping that when we shop around, maybe we'll even get a new health care provider, but we're shopping around. Hopefully, the worst-case scenario is we get an alternative plan that doesn't increase the premiums, just increases your copay. So the only time you're going to feel an effect of increased health care insurance is if you actually go to the doctor,
That's the best-case scenario?
as opposed to,
Oh, I just said,
well, I mean, the other scenario is to either find another provider that's cheaper than CHP, which I don't know if we'll be able to do,
well, we might, okay, we'll talk about it later, sorry.
or, like I said, I think they've been averaging 6% increases every year, so hopefully we can avoid that. Direct constitutional to share in the further cuts if board is looking to reduce the budget even further. Reduction in program services, including staff layoffs. Millage rate options above the rollback rate or below the rollback rate are also on the table. Well, some other additional discussion items I wanted to get your okay for as we move into finalizing the budget. What level you want your fire services MSBU to be at. I know we had a workshop to discuss the fire MSBU. Your EMS and fire personnel presented a presentation to you discussing where they think the level should be. We're not recommending, well, I'm not recommending as your interim to go above the 75 rate just because it would require re-advertising and individual notices being mailed out to every house. Last year, when we re-advertised it, it was $75. So anything below or up to 75, we wouldn't have to renotice it. The board's discretion to raise the MSBU. Solid waste assessment. Recent board direction and recent board comment has dictated that we're at least going to do the $112 assessment, if anything. I just want to get your okay to build that budget for your tentative with the $112 assessment in place. And like I said, after the 15th, it's your budget, so if we change that direction, I just need to know at what level we need to build the solid waste fund. Well, the last is the fire and EMS surtax. I know there was some discussion about implementing either EMS assessment or I know that we discussed it at one of the workshops and the county attorney presented this as an option as well. It's a 1% surtax that we can charge. It's similar to your 1-cent sales tax. It could be used for fire and EMS. Statute requires that it also offsettingly reduce your millage. So if implemented, you could reduce your millage by 1.78 mils, and you could potentially fund your fire and EMS from that tax and take it off the ad valorem. Well, it can't be in place this year, so we can start the process for next year. Okay, so in summary, we're looking at a $409,000 gap. We're just looking for directions on all those options that we gave the board, and that's kind of the agenda item in brief summary. And I'm open to further discussion.
Okay. Discussion?
I asked Will after earlier, can you pull that up with the, I asked him to do a prorated share of each office to reach that total number. Now, this is just something to look at, but if everybody's going to share that deficit equally, that's what it would be. Saying that's what it, you know, informational purposes.
Okay.
I guess we got two choices: either raise the millage or spending, and I'm for cutting spending.
On the, let's just say that if we didn't replace Lindsay, that would be a savings. That would be a savings of what?
I couldn't hear what you said.
Didn't replace Lindsay.
If you didn't replace Lindsay?
We did not replace Lindsay.
Well, currently the budget reflects her reduced salary because as what I budgeted for is at the minimum of planning director. She was making more of that as an assistant.
How much is that?
I think it was like 50,000 and a half, Will,
Plus
wasn't it?
benefits.
For a planning director at the minimum that we have it in our classification?
Yep.
Yeah. So
And-
that would be at $50,000.
That would be a recommendation of mine, that we stay within the county as we have it and find somebody in our county office that can fill that position.
Jerry, talking to your mic.
Gary?
You want to
we went down this road before when Donnie left. Nobody wanted to do it.
Well,
We got tired of getting beat up.
we're going to have to, we may have to, if we want to talk, we may have to do reductions in staff. We've talked about that, and to reach this goal, we're probably going to have to be, we'll talk about that as it goes on. I do think there might be reductions in staff within, that might be one of the places we find them there, but I don't know it'll be that position, because you have to have somebody, I would prefer to see somebody who's a certified planner in that position.
Well, I know that
And we don't have
Melissa-
any certified planners on staff.
I know that Melissa has years and years and years of experience.
But that's still not at the level that we need to be at that position.
Irregardless of that, I mean, I'd be fine with her doing it, but I don't think, she probably doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I would,
You know, we can't speak for her.
that's correct.
Yeah.
And it,
I'm sorry, go ahead. No.
in the event that we were to add the 112 on the solid waste, if we added that in, would that make a change in this budget?
No, because that's your solid waste fund, it's really your enterprise fund, it really won't,
So that's a
won't help your,
different- that's a
your
different-
He
general
just
fund,
needs to
right?
hear from us tonight, a head nod that we were going to proceed that way so that he can build a budget with that in there.
If we don't head nod in that direction, what I actually will probably do is there'll be a larger deficit, because they're going to have to take this money to offset the loss that we're having over there to help get to that 1.2 million shortfall we're anticipating.
I guess another key question is, are we going to absorb all these cuts ourselves?
I want to talk about that. I'm just I'm waiting for somebody, y'all to take a breath, and I'm going to read you what I've written here, and I hope, because we met today with some other folks, and let me just read this to you and see if it makes sense. I tried to put it in terms that I could understand, and hopefully that'll help everybody, to remain revenue neutral. And that's where I heard Randy say he liked the idea of revenue neutral, maybe a compromise of a quarter, half a mil. I heard Jerry say he'd like to remain revenue neutral altogether, and I'm somewhere in between all that too. But let me just read this. To remain revenue neutral, we must cut 12.7% total, which will include cuts already made this fiscal year. This equates to a $2.5 million cut. By remaining revenue neutral, ad valorem will be lowered to 7.25%. It's currently at 8.75. This also allows a $500,000 going to the reserve. This means that the Constitutional and Board will have to do the following. Now, I'm not, y'all don't start throwing stones at me yet. I'm just telling you, I'm going to give you the extremes, and then I'm going to give you a couple options in between.
So what you're going over now is if we take the taxes we implemented and offset them with a millage rate
Yes, sir.
reduction, these are the cuts that we'll need to do to
Make
make
it
that
revenue
happen.
neutral. Okay? Now, that's one extreme. And then I'm going to give you the other extreme. And then I'm going to give you something in between. This means that the Constitutional and Board will have to do the following in addition to what they already have done this fiscal year. In addition to what they've already done. So we know we got to do a 12.7. So the county administration would have to do another 4.1%. The sheriff would have to do an additional 8.8%. The property appraiser would have to do 9.8%. The tax collector 11.1%. The supervisor of elections would have to do 14.5% because he actually got an increase this past year, the year we're in, and the clerk would have to do an additional 7.7%. Now that's if we remain neutral, revenue neutral. Now, don't throw anything at me yet. I'm putting this out here so we can weigh it all out. That's worst case. That's what you suggested, Jerry. If we go up over here in the new tax, that we lower it over here in ad valorem. Okay. Now, if we don't stay revenue neutral, then ad valorem stays at 8.75, and the following would apply to the Board of County Commissioners and the Constitutionals, which equates to a 5.57% total cut. Now, remember, again, that's in addition to what we've already done this year. I'm sorry. With what we've already done, so the county administration would not do anything. They'd be zero. The sheriff would be at 1.7. That's putting all this in and doing nothing over here with ad valorem. The property appraiser would be at 2.67%. The tax collector would have to cut another 3.97%. The supervisor of election would have to cut the whole amount, 5.57%. and the clerk would do a 0.57%. Now, that's the extremes. If we do like Jerry, you suggested, we got to do those ugly numbers up there. If we put it to all this new tax, then we still got to cut 5.5%. Now, if we do a quarter meal reduction to 8.5 meals, that's a reduction that equals a 10.13% difference. Then the county administration's got to come up with an additional 2.7%. The sheriff with another 6.3%. The property appraiser with 7.2%. The tax collector with 8.4%. The supervisor of elections with 10.13%, the whole amount, and the clerk an additional 5.1%. That's a quarter meal. If we do a half a meal, and that makes it at 8.25 meals, that equates to an 11.42% reduction. Then the county administration comes up with 2.8, the sheriff 7.6, the tax collector, I think it's 8.7, and the property appraiser, I didn't write it down, but it's just the difference in that number. Supervisor of elections 11.4, and the clerk 6.4. So I wanted to give you all the extremes. I wanted to give you, if we do it like Jerry suggested, what those numbers are, and they're killers. It may be what we want to do.
I think it's important for us to note, too, just to each other, that when we say revenue neutral, our revenue is down $2 million
Exactly.
from this year. We're budgeting $2 million less. So, I mean,
And a half a
we
million
got
to
to
the
keep that
reserve.
in the background. That are, you know, if we were getting the same revenues this year as next year as we are this year, hey, we'd be out in the streets. We'd be going home right now. We'd be done.
Let me finish. I want to say one more thing, and you're right, Randy, but we have been unfair to Tim, I think. This is just my opinion. Y'all can throw me out on my ear, because I'm not going to tell a constitutional officer how they should cut. I'm not going to say to the sheriff, he's got to cut, if we remain revenue neutral 8.8%, I'm not going to go up there and say, well, you got to fire a bunch of deputies. I'm just going to, I want to say to Tim, you got to cut 4.1%. I don't want to tell him how to do it. And that's how we keep hamstringing him. We just look at him and say, Tim, you got to cut 4.1%, and he goes out of here and finds the best way to do that. And as soon as we start hamstringing with, don't cut, then I'll just use some names, and I know you're sitting here, Mr. Joyner, don't cut the library, don't cut Parks and Rec, don't cut. All of us have got pet peeve areas, but we can't do that. If we do that, he can't operate, and he's over there pulling his hair out. Like, okay, y'all just told me you don't want them all these areas cut, then where do you want me to cut? Same with the sheriff. I wouldn't dare tell him how to cut it. Just come back and cut it and tell us you got it. Or Donnie or anybody else for that matter. But does that make sense?
Yes, that's the way it should be.
Okay.
I understand your opinion. I disagree a little.
Okay, and that's fine. If we can give him some easy, clear guidance today, I've given you both extremes and a couple options in between, but the bottom line is that we got to cut.
And your numbers had the 500K.
Yes,
also in them?
all those numbers included 500,000 going to the reserve, and I'll be glad to go back over them again with you.
I heard them.
I wish I had this typed up for you, but I didn't have time.
Well, we have, the sheriff's office has given us a list here that if we'll transfer the EMS and the fire department over to the sheriff's office, we're out of this.
Tim's already cut that much, Jerry, in this year's budget. Whatever David said he could save, Tim's already did that in the budget. The $300,000 just said it would.
So that's already included
done.
in here.
Already included.
Okay.
Now, there are some other, we went and talked, and we met with Mary Dean today, and there's some other cost measures we're working on right now. Tim and I met with fire today. We're going to meet with, we're going to work this. I mean, he's really trying to work these numbers, and we went and got educated, and now we know how to move in that direction. Are all of them, we got to look at it and try to do as many of those things that we heard in that brief as we can. But again, I want to make it easy, and we got it. Well, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to mean cuts. So do we want to say, first of all, can I ask y'all, do we want to remain revenue neutral?
No.
No, I'm not for that. I know, Jerry, are you still for that?
Yes.
Okay.
I won't vote for
Lynn,
tax
where are you at
increase.
with it? No? Okay.
Now, going to the other extreme, at least for the time being, I'd like to see us keep the millage rate where it is.
I agree.
As we move forward, I'm inclined to we should make every cut we can make, and as we're trying to move forward and build up our reserve, at least for this next year, I don't think we should lower our millage rate. I think we should keep it steady.
So that's the second option then.
The second option, and we may still make more cuts, but I want to keep it in the same place and put as much money as possible into reserves. That's my goal.
I agree.
And at least for this next year, while we're having all this crises and furloughs and things going on now this year, I want to make sure we can get through 1 year and avoiding that.
So, Jerry, the other side of that coin then is to go to option 2, which is to stay at 8.75, and then the reduction is 5.57.
I just want to increase the millage rate.
We're not going to increase the millage rate if we do that option.
Okay. As long as I don't increase the millage rate or cost the homeowners any more money, I can go along with that.
And that's the best picture for all the constitutionals, is the second option. I mean, if we have to pick one, that's what I'd go with. is that
Well,
one.
we need to ask the constitutionals if they can cut anymore. That's,
I mean, because we know
Hold down.
I think that's a good point, because we know supervisor elections office can't cut. They have to actually add.
Okay, this is where I'm gonna get in trouble. But we can ask them. At the end of the day,
I know.
we gotta say, you got to cut. And if they come back and just say that,
I understand what you're saying.
Well, but we know, I'm just saying, when we look at can we go back to the percentage of the budget slide? I mean, we can take the cuts across the board, but we know that, I'm at the pie chart, but the supervisor elections office can't afford a $6,000, $7,000 cut because their costs are going up $15,000. I mean,
We could absorb that one. I mean, that's pretty easy.
but I'm using them as an example. They have every 4 years they have 2 elections. Every other year they have 1 election. Or we make the staff of 3 go to a staff of 2. I mean, that is another option, but
you say that, and then you set the precedence. Well, okay, if he can't do it, then the next constitutional officer has rationale why, and it's probably all good reason. And I agree with you that it's going to be hard for the supervisor to. I'm just saying that this is where the rubber meets the road, and we can do it.
That's okay. That's why we get paid the big bucks. We're talking about a line of credit, and we're talking about we just moved $500,000 of what we're trying to find into the reserve fund. We could use our line of credit to cover the reserve. If we have a line of credit and we don't we don't put the 500 into the reserve fund, you can always use your line of credit if you have an emergency.
I'm not. Yes.
Now, I don't want to let somebody go because I don't want to let
we can't afford to actually.
I don't want to let somebody go because I've just built my reserve fund.
I don't get to work like that, Jerry. Greg, can you come up and tell us why that?
Well, and while he's coming up, I'm not comfortable using the line of credit as our budget. That's just something like we're talking about using it for 2 months and then paying it back at the end of the 2 months as a bridge loan.
There's a difference between budgeting a reserve in case you need it. And in that sense, I understand what you're saying. We won't put anything there, and then if we need it for an emergency, we'll go to the line of credit. That's not what this budget's doing. It's building your reserve. Right now, you have no reserve. So you're putting some in there. Line of credit doesn't put anything in your reserve.
It's available, though, if you need money. Is it not?
Of course, but
So I want to talk. Okay, so other things I want to make points about, and the other issue going towards just like, for instance, letting Tim cut where he feels he needs to cut versus where we feel he needs to cut. There are programs that we may call pet programs, like for instance, code enforcement, that are not statutorily required. That Tim suggested already we consider cutting. I think we need code enforcement, and I would not support him cutting code enforcement. I'm using that as an example. I don't think I think if you get rid of. I know there are places I think we can
can't
cut.
get there from here, Alan. I'm telling you, we can't get there from here if we hamstring that man. I don't care if David Edwards is sitting there or if Jesus Christ is sitting there. If we tell them that they can't do that, then we can't make this budget work. I'm not trying to be.
No, and I think I think we can help guide him. Like if we're gonna I think we might be able to afford a reduction in staff in planning and zoning. We may not be. If they come back and say, and if Tim says I can't do that, he can come back to the next place and say he can't do that.
Okay.
That would be my a suggestion.
We have 50,000 that's sitting right there that we don't have to fill. Generally speaking.
Generally speaking, I disagree with you, but yes, there
That's
is
right.
right now $50,000 that is not
Correct.
being spent. I think, so let's talk about some of the things. Well, another issue that's in the budget currently that I think is, has the potential to be very foolish, and you're going to call it my pet project, and I'm going to explain to you again how it's not my pet project. It is the library, because we're using state funds. So the way, again, I had the presentation done, I'll have them come back and do it again, just to make sure that if y'all make this choice, you're making it fully aware. By the way the state fund system works, which we're reducing our library budget because we're using more state funds. By using more state funds and reducing our county, it means in a year, we're going to have less state funds, which means that in a year, you have to find twice as much money. It's the same problem we're having right now because we used $500,000 from the jail bed last year, and we don't have that this year, so we have to find that money.
Alan, it may not, and I'm with you, I don't want to shut the library down, and it may not get, but I want him to take his budget and come back, and you're right, we're going to have it's not going to be a done deal here today. We're going to say to him, you got to cut another 4.1%. That's the bottom line. Well, actually, if we do this option, he don't have to cut anything. He's done.
Well, and I
We're done.
think we're going to cut still, because I think we're going to have to cut to make up for like the supervisor elections office.
Okay, that's not going to come out of the library.
That's not going to come out of the library.
Like he just said, we already got a $50,000 savings. That more than offsets that.
And he can figure, and a direction I would like to give the interim county administrator is any fund that is matchable, I think we should try and take advantage of. So any place that we can, if we put $1 in, we get money back to help run that program, I think we should be investing in.
Not when somebody loses their job.
Well, they may not lose their job this year, but they'll lose it next year, and we're saying it, we're just giving them 1 year's notice that you're not going to have funding for your job next year. That's all we're doing, because of the way the funding works. It's a year delay match.
Tim, did you account for our reduction in our contribution to mosquito control in this budget? It was budgeted at 35, and we...
Yes, I think we did. I don't think I updated this chart that I have in here, Commissioner, but I think I did. We did knock it down, right, Will?
In the line item of outside agencies, but in the budget, you reduced it. Okay, because here it's still 35.
Okay. I understand. I appreciate what you're trying to do.
But I don't know if you reduced it here.
The other comments, if we can, just as opinions, and I'll leave this to your discretion, Tim. I think animal control has a really small budget. And I appreciate Ivanhoe going out above and beyond to continue to cut money. It's real. I don't understand how you keep your doors open. So I appreciate what you're doing. If we can somehow hold their budget,
Now that's two pet. You can't have two
not
pet
pet projects. You could have a dozen. But
I got a question. Why are we putting $25,000 aside for the civic center,
community center.
community center? Why are we doing that?
We got to pay the electricity.
Close it. There's nobody using it, are they?
Well, if we don't pay the electricity, it'll rot.
Shut it down.
Rot. We can't let it rot.
No, it won't.
That's an option.
No,
That's an option.
it will not. It will not rot, Alan. You can close the building down. You can cut the air conditioning off. You can do that. The building will not rot. It may. It will not.
I will double check.
And there's no people there. We're not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
If we hurt the building, who cares? If we save
Mr.
$25,000.
Arts has a point.
Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't in the discussion with Mr. Franklin, but is it not possible to include the cost of the utilities in the membership
That's what I was just
fee?
going to say, that we're endeavoring to get all, some baseline maintenance and utility costs covered through the WISE contract. So hopefully, Tim is just being conservative in putting that number in. Hopefully, once we finalize this, we'll be able to bring that number down.
I told.
I'm sorry. He would have not been doing his job if he had to put a number down that. Tim wouldn't have been doing his job if he hadn't put some number down here.
I agree with you.
And it's our job to say, and I'm fine with cutting. If that's what the board wants to do, that's okay. And
Mary-
we'll go another year without doing anything with that.
Mary Dean, these prisoner numbers, you think 2.1 is that being a little conservative, or you think that's...
Could you speak into the mic? Thank you.
Please, Mary Dean.
It's only
Get a
because...
mic we can pass around. to
Why
people.
Well, then they have, on the mic, they're also on camera. That camera's recording everything in the room. They don't get seen
It's
there.
gonna be on camera. Anyway.
Effective October, the resolution's been amended to increase the amount that's being put into the Housing Trust Fund. So it's 20% instead of 10% in order to pay back the transfer that was
Let me
made
just-
last month.
Just out of, just talking points here. What is the jail bed reserve now after we pulled that money out to cover ourselves in '09 or '08, '09?
About 250,000.
That's after the door money we approved the other
We
night.
pulled out about 780, right, to balance the budget. If we, just for argumentative sake, if we didn't take that additional 10% out, what would the jail bed revenues be then? Be up another 200,000?
Yeah, I think it was budgeted at, what, 2.4?
So right now,
2.4
we're
would be
taking
fine.
out 10 to go to reserve, but we voted to take an additional 10. So just theoretically, if we reduced it back down to 10, I don't know how they would feel about that, but anyway, instead of 20% taken out for jail bed revenues, if we took it down to 10%, that would make up 200-something thousand
And we would
dollars.
never get our money repaid. It would take 10 years.
And that's like the
I
reserve,
understand,
Randy.
but
I mean, that's like not putting anything in
I
the reserve.
understand, but there's another factor we're fighting against here is times are just getting worse also, and, at some point they're gonna get better, but
I hear you.
we don't know when, and that's what we don't know.
Yes,
Thank you, Mary.
One of the things I think it's important for our board to recognize is that many of our constitutionals, many of our programs have, in past years, some of them have made larger cuts than others, cut positions, and when we come back and say we're just going to do a 10% cut across the board, that affects people differently if they've already made cuts in the past. I'm just a comment. And Cheryl's office absorbed the higher costs for bringing in money, but your costs went up when you took over driver's licenses. I don't know how that affects things. There's just little things that keep changing. It's neutral? Okay.
Tim, is there if we somehow improved our ambulance collections, that would make a difference to this number also, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, we could budget that revenue. If we
I don't know
there's
what-
gonna be an increase.
What number could be increased? I don't know how we'd increase it, first of all, but if we could get additional revenue, of course, that would offset this gap. But we can't sit here and tell you to
I'll ask
increase
a
ambulance
question.
collection by 20%, because,
That gives me a little
You
pause
can't.
because that's not a guarantee.
No, I know.
You
I said we
we're
can't
gonna
sit here
budget
and
on
tell you
something
to
we
do
don't know
that.
if we can do.
That was easy. We could have fixed all these revenue shortfalls.
I have a question, though, in this line item, is what in the world is sanity inquisition?
that's for us.
That's state mandated
That's where I go after here.
For-
to pay.
For
While we're
board,
here.
it must be for board of commissioners.
It's our mental health contract.
We have to, if a homeless, insane person shows up, I believe we have to take care of them. In the same way, if a person dies, we have to bury them. There's things that the state mandates that we do that we have no
It's
control
It's not
over.
the state mandate.
Wouldn't that
They
be
have mandated at 55,000.
It's a contract, yep.
Okay. Gee.
Okay, can we rein back in and can we all agree on option 2? Do I need to read it again? Is that okay with everybody?
I can agree.
I mean, that's the cleanest one to do.
8.75, and, yeah,
Yes. I want to
got
read
to
it.
cut 400,000.
Does the Constitution need to hear it again? Are y'all okay? You need to hear it again? Okay, here's what it goes. If we don't stay revenue neutral, then ad valorem taxes stay at 8.75. We don't increase taxes. And the following would apply to the BOCC and constitutionals. It would be a 5.5% cut we got to do, total cut, rather than a 12.7 on the other extreme.
From last year's budget, from this year's budget to next year's
It's in
budget.
addition to what we've already done. So the county administration would do 0 since they've already cut 8.6%. You can laugh, but Donnie, we have cut 8.6%. We've cut 600 or 800, which is, Tim, is it 600 something thousand? The sheriff would have to cut an additional 1.7%. The property appraiser would cut an additional 2.67%. Tax collector 3.97%. And the supervisor of elections 5.57. Maybe we have to eat that. I don't agree. Clerk 0.57% because he's already done a 5% cut.
I believe we have some more areas we could cut. I mean, I know you said us 0, I understand your mathematics, but I think,
I'm fine with
if
that.
we could make it less painful for the smaller offices especially.
I completely agree.
And we can
if
look
there's
at
areas that you
him
want
and
us to
say,
reduce,
take the
we can.
supervisor, so what percentage you want to tell him to cut? We need to tell him that today.
I want to tell this man to cut as much as he can. I'm not going to tell him who to cut or whatever, but you understand the gist of how general of a direction can we give Tim? I mean,
You need to give him I say you can give him a number.
all right,
And then the constitutionals know what is really expected of them. Right now, this is what's going to be expected of them, but if we can drain us some more, then that lessens the burden on them some more.
We don't have to drain us. We've got, Tim said 50,000 in that person who just decided they didn't
And
want to be here.
25,000 if we
And
don't.
25,000 more. So that's a total of 75,000. And
Jerry, you're assuming that all the rest of us don't want to hire a planning director.
no, I'm just telling you what I believe.
Right.
I'm just telling you.
I might think it's, what if nobody wants to be the planning director and we don't have one and we got to hire
You never know until you ask the question.
Well, that's true.
Okay, yeah.
So we need to give him a number.
All right. You want me to say it?
I think we should keep the millage, because that's the main question coming out of the day, is at 8 3/4 when you advertise it.
So your numbers don't match mine because you took into account cuts that have already been made.
Yes.
So you're saying in aggregate it needs to be 5.5. Donnie may have already cut 3, so we're going to ask him to cut an additional
To come up to 5.57, exactly.
Tim, I don't want to put you too much on the spot here, but just without eviscerating, I guess, the staff ranks, I know we have some extra staff possibly. What kind of number do you think you could cut without shutting down the parks, the library, all that kind of stuff?
Just so I can leave the room, I would rather cut by the percentages that you would come, if it's 409,000 and we can work on that number and hopefully get it down, and then do it by percentage amongst us all so we all contribute to additional cuts, I would be fine with that, and I think we can get there. I don't want to not walk away from it where we don't have to cut anything more. I don't think, like I said, I have to live here in the world.
Okay.
So, but if that provides you any comfort, I think we can get there. I don't know if Will wants to pull those numbers back up, I think we can. I think it looked like another 150,000. If we have to try to get there, we can. For the board, anyway.
I think that
Can we agree? If we can agree to that, Randy, then we can go back and we can massage these numbers and go out with an email to the constitutionals and say this is what the real numbers are. They're going to be less than what I just quoted.
Tell me again what he said then.
He's saying if he cuts another 150,000 out of our budget, okay, then
Which I think is completely realistic.
all these numbers will drop, and we can tell that this is the worst case.
So why don't your numbers match mine, I guess is what I'm asking. Mine come up to a number of 409. You know what I'm saying? And I'm showing us cutting 150. I'm showing sheriff cutting.
Yours is 5.5 across the board, right?
No, mine is simply taking the number we need to get, the shortfall, and distributing them out amongst the constitutionals, their percentage of the total budget.
Right, and the chairman's is based on the total revenue shortfall that we're facing, which is 5.5%.
Mary Dean, what is a 1.7% to you? Additional. Okay.
Oh, and that's worse. That doesn't work out for you.
Do we have
The
to,
numbers.
This is the number we need, though, is 409, right?
Yes.
do we have
We're gonna get
to,
there with this.
do we have to go with a 500,000 reserve? Could we have 400,000 reserve?
we should be aiming for a $500,000 reserve, because that
we
just
need to.
no, because another thing to keep in mind is that money is the money we're going to have if anything unexpected happens.
We talked about that. I talked to Tim about this earlier, Jerry, actually, and if there's some impasse, if there's a $10,000 or $20,000, $30,000 impasse, that somebody just can't do it, then he can reduce the reserve amount to 470 or 440 or whatever. So there is flexibility in there. Theoretically, if we do no reserve, we pack up and go home right now. We're done.
I sort of think as the way that I operate, which I don't advise anybody to do. I have no reserve. I operate on a credit line, which is not a very good way to do.
Well, I don't think we'd be fiscally
But
responsible.
if you had 400,000 though, that would be quite a reserve. Okay, I'll quit beating that.
But yes, there is flexibility if Buddy or Donnie just says, look,
We need
I
that.
want to encourage you to do that, of course.
We're supposed to have $3 million, right? $6 million? $6 million.
Look, let's let Greg talk. and
Somewhere
see what we got.
between there.
Go ahead, Greg.
If you eliminated the $500,000 reserve line, don't you inherently have 5% set aside to go to your reserve because you've only budgeted your revenues at 5%?
Theoretically, yes. Yes.
What's 5% of your total budget?
What, $500,000?
Yeah, probably close to $500,000.
You've already got 500,000 inherently built into your budget. If your revenues come in at 100% or 98%, then if it comes in at 98%, you've got 3% added to your reserve.
You're giving false hope here
I
because
agree. I'm
we started
just
this year
pointing
that
out-
same way and we had to find another 500.
No, last year you budgeted $800,000 to spend in your reserves and you outspent your revenues. This year, if you don't outspend your revenues, and your revenues come in, you will already have money built into your reserve.
Which is a good point because I talked to Tim earlier today and he has
Wait,
not.
Greg, don't go away.
Tim has not allocated money in here yet to subsidize the road department, in which may need to happen still.
Greg,
That may be.
but you and I have sat, and Tim have sat together. Theoretically, we get that $500,000. That still is a drop in the bucket to what we need.
I totally agree, and I'll be the last person to tell you to drop the $500,000 from the reserve line. I'm just pointing out what no one has mentioned yet, and that is you already have an inherent reserve built into the budget,
You're right.
which ought to be
Maybe
that way
next year
every
we won't
year.
have to put 500,000 towards reserve. Mary Dean, or Greg actually too. Please don't make her get up. Can I just ask her a question?
She comes to the microphone for the public
Has to be on the
records.
record, Randy.
All right, Tim, if the jail bed revenues, cross our fingers, follow the trend that they're following now, correct? We may actually have more revenue in jail bed.
That's correct.
Couple $100,000?
Yes, we have.
Hold on, let me finish. Are we gonna need that we won't need that to cover a budget gap this fiscal year, correct? Could that be put towards the reserve, basically?
It'll start
It will
the
go
process
there.
of building your reserve, right?
It traditionally does.
So that excess jail bed revenue goes to whose reserve? Jail bed revenue?
Falls to fund balance and it starts.
County's
Fund
reserve.
balance.
Goes in the counties.
Here's what I'm saying. If we can get, if our goal is to get 500,000 in the reserve, right? Okay, hold on. Okay. And we get 200,000 carryover from excess jail bed revenues from them, theoretically, we'd only need to put 300,000 to reach our, you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but again, you have, I think a point that's worth mentioning here is our goal of what we should have in our fund balance is, I said somewhere between $3 million.
I understand that.
So having an extra $200,000 go towards it.
We've got to build it up.
I understand that, but we're on the bottom right now. At least now we're starting to fill the hole in to get up to ground level. We don't need to soar to the skies on the first year.
And I agree.
Same.
One of the things I was saying earlier when I said I'd like to keep the millage rate the same is any cut we can make, I think we should make, and any extra money we have, I think we should put towards our reserve. I think we should be doing our budget in a way that we plan on having the $500,000 to go to the reserve. I wasn't going to talk about it, I was aware, but not going to bring it up because it just causes confusion. When you start talking about we might have extra money if all
That doesn't confuse me.
the revenues come in. So I will say I anticipate the solid waste assessment passing. You should use that in your budget. So one way or the other. I have asked at the last county commission meeting. We asked ESG to come back with some proposals for how we might be able to change solid waste collection. I've also asked them to come back talking about things we may need to do looking at our sewer and septic systems at that same presentation, just as a heads up, which might help offset us having to subsidize them as heavily.
I want to sell the system.
And if we can sell it, all the better. But in the meantime, I don't want to lose any more money on the system. So that's what I'm trying to do. I want people paying their fair share to dispose of their disposables.
In the event, let's just say that everybody pays what we're asking and it hurts and so forth, and then revenues come in better than what we expect. Is it possible then we could sort of refund that pain that we just pulled out of them? No.
We would put it towards
Next
reserves.
year. Carry it forward and then charge a whole lot less next year. but you can't do it in a
Well,
budget year.
same difference. They get the money one way or the other. So
For you.
if we cause you great pain today and our revenues come in better tomorrow and we bring it back to you.
Let me throw one more thing into the mix, too, is if we were to do a MSBU for ambulance service, we've talked about it, theoretically, we
Can't do it this year.
You could do an MSBU. The one tax that I mentioned in here is something.
not that
would
tax,
be a
just a,
reference.
An MSB.
just like we're doing fire, you pay $70 a year, and you have ambulance. Everybody pays it. If we did that, we could still remain with option 2 and go ahead and drop a mill, correct?
So if we, and Heather, but it might be, I'll let you answer that question, because I asked the answer, I know the answer, but I want it to come from the county attorney. If we charge what's the issue if we charge an MSBU for EMS this fiscal year?
You could charge one for the fiscal year beginning October 1.
Sorry, yeah.
But you would not be able to collect that on the tax bill this year. You would have to send separate bills. You'd have a lower collection rate. You could collect delinquencies in subsequent years, but it can't go on the tax
So
bill.
even if we did that, we couldn't do it till next year.
We could do it this year. What would happen is Cheryl would mail two. Her postage would double. She would mail a bill for the property tax, and then she'd mail a bill for the EMS.
Or we mail it.
Or you'd mail it.
Or well, someone
would mail it.
Someone will mail it. I said tax collector because it's a tax, but yeah.
Costs an extra $12 grand to collect it, basically.
Citizens more than likely would pay it, but if they did not pay it, there would be no punishment until the next year, where it would be rolled into their property tax the next year.
And your collection rate would
So it would double
probably
for 1 year.
hover around 70% for that. Generally, that's what you see with separate billings.
I would personally like to proceed in that direction to take some burden off of the property taxes, personally. If we funded ambulance with that flat fee, we could reduce them 1 mil.
The other thing that Tim proposed that we can't do this year that we could do next year that we might talk about is just waiting until next year and charging this tax for ambulance and fire.
It's got to be
Goes up
voter
referendum.
approved. It'd have to go on it's voter approved.
Oh, okay.
It has to go on a
General.
general or a regularly scheduled ballot. You can't call a special election for it under the state statute.
So it'd be 2
It'd
years.
be interesting to see what the voters think. I mean, whatever the voters think, that's what the answer is. If they say I couldn't see them wanting to do it, let's have an 8% tax rate, but you never know.
One of the things that Tim suggested in our ways we might be able to save money that he may want direction from staff, so I was curious about your thoughts on this, or direction from us, is on a flex insurance cap. In my conversation with him, he used the model that Tallahassee Regional Memorial Hospital has $1,000 flex cap. At least for and other constitutionals can do what they want, but for our staff, maybe following that healthcare provider's role model and doing $1,000 cap on our flex plan.
We could absolutely, I've dropped it in this budget to 30, it was tracking with our healthcare contribution to employees. At the last workshop, you guys directed to put a cap on it. I put a $3,500 cap on it. We can go lower, and that would be savings that we could all share, and so that the total gap closes a little bit. But I just think that if that's what you want, we can certainly do that.
How much would
say one more time?
What would you save if you took it down to 2,000?
We'd have to know. I don't know if I have that
Okay.
number
I think Debbie wanted to speak into the mic. She had an opinion.
Well, the only thing
Speak into the mic.
The only thing I was going to mention is that we have one contract that includes the whole county. So I think, did I hear you right when you said the BOCC could just cap it at 1,000 and the other constitutionals could do as they please?
That's what I was thinking.
That would be something I would have to check with the company. I don't know how that contract, if that contract could accommodate that.
Be a
or not.
monster.
I want to also say that I'm glad to see all these interfund transfers from funds being used to prop up our budget. In other words, I don't know if we're no longer taking money from the road department in order to support the administrative staff. That's been one of the problems. So I'm glad to see we're standing on our own 2 feet, and that helps them out a lot too.
I can tell you, I said it the other night, I want to say it with Cleve here, they're now operating with the cuts they've made at the 02-03 level. They've done some serious cutting for us. So we appreciate that. And going forward, hopefully we're going to be able to We've talked about putting fuel back into their contract and renegotiating that contract. That's what I prefer. And anyway,
Could you say what your suggestion was again?
if we don't stay revenue neutral, then the ad valorem stays at 8.75, and the following would apply to the board and constitutionals, which equates to a 5.57 total cut. County administration would be 0, but we've already said we're going to try to find 150,000. I'd like for us to say that number to him as a marching orders. The sheriff would, now these numbers will be lower if we cut some more, so that this is just preliminary now. 1.7, property appraisal will be 2.67, tax collector 3.97, supervisor elections would be 5.57, and the clerk 0.57.
And then, Tim, you added something to that. You said if you were allowed to
Cut
work with,
150,000.
cut 150 and work with the constitutionals,
All those numbers would be smaller. Yes, sir.
Please come.
How'd I come up with those
Come
numbers?
up with your different percentages for the different constitutionals.
If you take 5.57, that's the
So
total.
you're figuring everybody's gonna give 5.57.
Including what you've done this year. That's why it's not 5.57.
Well, the only part I got a problem with that is when you look at the pie chart you had of how much each of the offices are of the budget.
it would equal out though, Donnie. If you're just doing strictly
Well,
percentage,
what it sounds like we're doing, okay.
No, this is the most fair way to do it.
if it were dollar
Most
figures,
fair.
you'd be exactly right.
It is, Donnie. That's what I was trying to be, was as fair as we could get.
Let me-
Because you've already, but Donnie, because you've already done 2.67, you subtract that from 5.57, that leaves, I'm sorry, you've already done 2.9%, so you subtract that from 5.57, that's how you get to 2.67.
So you're including what they've already...
Yes, what you've already contributed this year.
Well, I'm of the opinion, as we try and figure this out, that
Yeah.
what
It counts.
Give you almost 6% last month.
Well, the money you gave us last Tuesday night was from the previous year's money. Donnie, I know that.
it's reoccurring dollars.
It's money that they gave us back for a previous year. We can't count that as a budget cut.
Well, with the percentage cut you're
yeah.
talking about, it's a reoccurring cut.
Yes.
He wants to make like what you gave us was money you had left over. He's looking for an additional reoccurring cut that will be cut forever, or until times come back again. Property value goes back up.
You'll pass these out. You make this okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've got a little statement here, Donnie. I think you got it in your hand. You want to give it to him. My only question is, and I'm okay. If I have to do that, I'll do it somehow. I'm not going to cut my people. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll figure it out. But we've kind of done a little chart and went back. I don't have all my things, but just like looking, we're kind of operating again now back under the 06-07 budget too, okay? But we went back there and picked up some, like, my only question is, like, on the board, you went from 06-07, I mean, it's gone up 23.4%. And so your budget is so high. I mean, you're not operating under the 06-07. And I'm just kind of, it's $1,500,000 or something more. I'm just curious, maybe we've been, and I'm not putting it off on you, but I'm just saying it's funny to me how high yours is on up there, 23%, and like a property appraiser is 0.8, so how come we got such a big difference there? If we're operating under 06-07 and you're not, I mean, where's the big difference? The money that came out last year from them, I know it got dropped 6%. That was like $487,963. That was the money when you pulled the fire department out, if I'm not wrong, and put them under MSBU. So technically, that's what I'm asking here. I think some of this ought to be looked at. Where's all this extra money going? You know what I'm trying to say? I don't question. I can defend mine. I can't defend yours. I'm just questioning the fact that we're operating under 06-07. And in 06-07, your budget was $6,453,398, and now it's $7,933,579. That's a big chunk of difference. Even taking your 600 or something out, it's still way on up there. I mean, there's a big loop right there. I want
I personally
to know.
agree with you.
I want to know.
Everybody should share the pain.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm
So-
not saying I want to put it off on you, but I mean, where did all this money, I mean, where's it at? I don't know where it's at. And I can vouch, I always see the line by line on our stuff, and I know where it's at. But it just seems like if all these departments are going to go back functioning, like you just said, under 06, 07 budgets, but yours ain't going back to 06, 07, so...
I didn't say that. I didn't say we were all going back.
Well, you said someone
Didn't say
else was
that.
operating under
No,
06,
I didn't.
07.
I said, please shop is functioning under the 02,
That's
03
correct.
budget.
You did. And we are, and they are. I know several of them are, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I'm just saying this is an avenue maybe we ought to look at.
If we took,
Cheryl?
how many dollars would we, really, actually fair is fair. How many dollars would we have to go down from where we are to be at the same number?
That's right.
Well, Tim, or you know?
Sorry.
To have this 06, what percentage would we have to go farther down to meet that 06, 07 budget?
Your
Well, I mean-
06, 07 was $6,453,398.
Where is that on this chart?
You don't have it on that one. This is some.
Cheryl's saying that apparently she feels like all the constitutionals are operating at 06, 07 level. I know the sheriff's not.
No, not all of them. We are. The sheriff isn't. We're
Okay.
pretty much getting back
Cheryl,
to
you-
that. I'm a little bit higher, but not quite. But they.
Tim's cutting $150,000. We know that. You may not have to.
Well, that's the question I was asking. Where do we have to go?
Well,
We're
that's
going to
okay.
put another
I
150.
don't mind. If
We
I
can.
have to pay the extra, that's fine, but I
don't go
just,
there. Yeah.
you know, I just want to make sure, like you're saying, it's going out fair.
I'd have to see, because ambulance is in that, and there's just, I'd have
It
to
was.
see the breakdown.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So, thank you. And I think I think a property appraiser and our tax collector make a good point. It becomes complicated, and the flat cut across the board sounds nice, but I don't know that it's the best way to go. But I would love to see what people come back with as we try and see what we can do. Did we decide not to do any additional cuts with flex insurance?
No, I don't think.
I don't think you guys gave a head nod one way or the other.
Well, I propose. Jerry seemed to think I would say 1,000. I don't use flex insurance, so maybe I'm being I was using that because that's what Tim said his wife gets at TMH. So I use that as like, if a hospital says flex insurance should be 1,000, I was like,
I'm just.
that.
I can tell you what the school board does.
What's the school board do?
I use the school board. It's $1,000 a month, and that's what it is.
$1,000 a month?
I mean, 1,000 a year. I'm sorry. Thank you. 1,000 a year.
Say we can't afford that.
So if the school board does 1,000,
$100 a month. I'm sorry.
$1,200.
$100 a
If you
month.
opt out of
$1,200 a
if
year.
you opt out of the insurance, you get a $1,200 reimbursement that you are eligible for.
You can charge it towards deductible. You can charge your teeth. You can charge your any medical.
How about
Well, I
you?
know in private industry, if you don't get the insurance, you just don't get it. You don't get.
I would think that if
Well,
But this is a good thing.
I would think if the school board does it, we should do it.
$1,200.
Fine with me.
That's fine with me too.
I think-
I mean, I don't care.
This is like Congress. Congress has got two rules. They got a rule for themselves, and they got a rule for everybody else. We shouldn't have that. We should do the same thing that everybody else has.
I want to make.
$1,200.
Okay, first of all, I'd like an estimate of how many, if we make that cut, how many people are going to switch to health insurance, because you may be worse off. I mean, some people use that as an alternative, but I don't know if it's significant. The other thing is, I know there's some programs where employees can put pre-tax money in, so it's not so much that the employer necessarily is contributing, but they themselves can go to so that people who need it for mental health services, people who need it for things that health insurance doesn't cover. Right, but I'm talking about if the only thing we're really giving employees is just what's covered by insurance, and some families have real high in other health expenses that aren't covered. I'm just wondering if there's at least a mechanism for them to deduct from their own pay so that they can have that kind of a flexible benefits program.
Ms. Ernst, I think most of our employees don't have any extra money to put anywhere.
I want to make a quick point too. Right after I got elected, I went and sat down with Greg.
We pursue that, at least.
You may not believe this, but Greg, you remember we ran the board salaries minus fire and EMS from parishes last year, remember? And then last year. And they were pretty daggum close. I mean, believe it or not,
What's your point?
that the staff levels were simply switched around and not, my perception at least was, well, the administration's spending a lot more money now than it was then on people. And I sat down with Greg and we took the numbers and compared them and they were very close.
Paris had made our government bigger than people think he did.
Donnie?
We're getting there.
In reference to flex insurance, I use the flex part of it. My wife works the school board. She has insurance. Their insurance is a little higher than ours. So obviously, if we lose that money, I will go back to our insurance because it's cheaper. And I will actually get insurance through the sheriff's office of the county. There's going to be a tremendous amount of people in our office, and that you'll go in the insurance program to the flex program. Maybe the $5,500 or whatever it is high, but I think that's the same cost that they pay for another employee for the insurance. I use the $5,300 or whatever it is because I like doctors and I go see a lot of doctors. But I don't know, and every time you get $5,300 or you say $5,600, everyone is not going to use the $5,600, so you really don't know how much you're going to save. Because somebody may not go to the doctor 2 or 3 times a year, and that'd be a $100 savings. On what you're trying to figure. If you say 5,300 times how many employees you got, that's really not a true figure because everybody's not going to use the total amount like I do.
How about if you could just bring back for our next budget, thank you, for our next budget hearing, a look at this, maybe a guesstimation, see if it's possible for us to do this with our staff and not the other constitutionals, and let each constitutional decide based off what works best for them and their staff.
I mean, that's fine. I'm not going to vote for that because that's not fair. Let's do it
It's
fair.
not fair for this guy to get a $1,200 and this guy to get $5,300 because he works for
I'd sue
a
you.
sheriff or whatever.
Anyway, I don't think that's fair. Maybe we don't go to 1,200. Maybe we cut it in half. But we go from we make it 2,500.
How many people actually participate in this?
7.
A good chunk.
Off the top of my head, I want to say we have about 30, maybe 40 people that utilize it, but Donnie is correct. We have a lot of folks who don't use the entire amount. We have a lot of people who only use, maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000 of it. So he is correct in what he's saying.
But unfortunately, we got a budget like they're going to use the whole amount.
Exactly.
And that's where the problem comes in.
Can we compromise and say 2,500?
You can.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to raise it, that's fine. I think whatever the school has got is fine. 2,500 is, well, we got to get a mic.
No, we ain't getting a mic.
If the county budget's helping the $5,600 per employee, but if we don't use all that money, do we get that money back at the end of the year, or where is that money at? Is there?
That just falls to your fund balance as
Fund balance,
unexpended.
thank you.
Yep.
So, Donnie, would that, speaking for your people up there, does 2,500 sound like a reasonable compromise?
The number I'm looking at is how much cheaper our insurance is than the school board, and it's about that number. That would be less. So if our insurance, if the flex gets much less than that, I would be going to I would stop doing the flex and get insurance through us because it would save me money.
I'm not asking for
And then
Donnie
she'd get
Crum, I'm
12.
asking for all the sheriff's departments. Does 2,500 sound like a reasonable number?
That sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Kim, did anybody talk to the school board about
I was just
combining
going to ask Donnie,
insurance?
who does the school board use? I thought we had, is it CAP still? Yeah. Why are they rates? Because they got more people in it? Is that what it is, or-
We talked about trying to,
How many different plans have we got? School board and
Okay, so it got cheaper. Oh, and they only pay 10 months out of the year. Well, we did look into the school board, like Commissioner Arch had asked us to do, but we'd have to they said that we'd have to budget together. We'd have to be under the same budget for us to give that group, to be included in that whole group.
well, I'd like to give Tim the direction that you just read. Cut 150 from us, and then,
Do this
yeah,
right here. and then tell after we figure out what it is, send in the new numbers, what that cut needs to be.
It's either that or raise the millage rate, one of the two.
Okay,
Not
so,
gonna do that.
what's that?
But you're right, that's the other option. So, does that give you enough guidance?
I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to cut 150,000 from our budget to get that down, so that's going to be,
And then how does that change these percentages that I said?
are we using percentage of budget? Does Commissioner Merritt?
Whatever you need to get up to 400 and to close the gap.
Well, I want to hammer that out here, so when...
Well, I don't
after we
think
leave,
you can
they're
cut Buddy,
all on the
because
same
he
page.
has to have he has that election. I don't, and he's not my pet project, but if he has increased elections, then that's an increased cost. So we can soak that up, I think, and then distribute the rest, prorated amongst the rest of the constitutional.
Anybody, and I'm not being mean to us, but I think it's easy to say cut 10% across the board, or whatever the percentage is. I think the difficult decisions are where you're like, I think we can reduce here, we can't reduce there. Like when I know we've been using the library as an example, we get, for instance, when I bring back at the agenda item in July, if we continue with the furloughs in the library, we could see a reduction in next year's money in 2 years, state funding towards Wakulla County. So that would mean that you'd lose that money, and then you could kill the library by cuts. We don't. I mean, the library provides. That's not. I'm just using that as an example. We have to be smart about where we're making our cuts.
I think it's all right for Alan to make gentle suggestions like he's doing, but we don't want to mandate dictate. Right.
Okay. Does that give you enough guidance? Leaving it at 8.75 mils. We use this option 2, if you will, call it option 2. You're gonna cut another 150,000 somewhere. I mean, we already talked some numbers, and then revise the percentages they need to cut. It's gonna change their percentages a little bit.
I'm just trying to think.
Okay. Let me word it a little different. See if it's the same thing you're saying. Hold the millage rate 8.75. To do that, we got to make up 409,000. Cut 150 from us. You figure out how to do it. I'd say leave Buddy's like it is. It's a couple $1,000. He needs it for elections. Distribute the rest of the cut on a prorated share to the rest of the constitutionals.
And okay, I got you. That worked.
Okay.
That worked.
Okay, so not going with what they had already cut, just doing it as a...
We got to make up 400 something.
No, I know, but
Okay.
it's the difference
still
between
be
going
the
with
number.
Mike's approach versus your approach to the percentage.
But I don't know if your percentages will change.
Okay, they may not.
Now, there's another way to look at this too, Alan, if I might. Brent, for example, has he cut more than other people, or okay? As long as everybody's being treated fairly, the same. I mean, if he's made extra sacrifices so that somebody else didn't have to, then I don't think he should. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, yes. A couple comments I would like to make, and my suggestions for how I'd like you to guide your choices as you come back and prepare a budget for us. When you're looking at the different departments within administration for cuts, please take into consideration the people who have cut in the recent past. If they've made large cuts recently and have weakened themselves, I'm asking you to take that into consideration and may not continue to cut as strong there. Maybe look to other parts underneath you. I want you to, as early as possible, if you think there's someone who may, in your budget cuts, or a person you might be able to cut the position of, to give them the heads up, like we may end up cutting your position, alert them now versus later, so that they have the idea, so that they aren't getting blindsided with short notice.
They'll know July 15th.
Right. I'm just saying, as soon as you can.
Right.
And my other suggestion is my guide advice. I've said it 3 times, but I'm making sure I state it again. If there's a program underneath you that receives matching funds, I don't care what the program is, try and keep that in mind when we're trying to set up our budget.
What kind of, do we want to give Tim any direction?
I'm hoping there's more than one. I know the library's one, but there could be others that I don't know about.
Do we want to give him any reduction, Tim, in the line item funding for outside agencies? Do we want to just
That's what I was looking
leave
at.
that alone? Or
No, I was looking at that also, Randy. If you leave in the health department contribution,
You can't.
you leave it in, And we talked about the mosquito deal the other night. But if you leave the senior citizens contribution, and then the transportation as it is, the sanity as it is, and then just take everything else out.
I don't think we can take the, I don't know if we can, Jerry.
Well, you got the Association of City and County Coalition. I don't know what that is.
Florida Association of Counties,
Yeah, and the Appalachia Regional Planning Council.
also important.
Small County Coalition.
Also important.
North Central Florida Regional Planning, CRTPA. Mike says that's a waste of time. The Economic Development. If we just go down through there, you're going to have,
Okay, let's agree right now what we're gonna cut. Let's start at the top. Let's take them one at a time.
I don't know if I'm...
I don't know anything about...
That right now, or
We can.
let's leave it up to him.
No, this is
It's something we need to do because they're gonna be
Well,
crying on their
I
shoulders.
think some of them do have some implications, and that's something we need to discuss.
I don't know
I think we
any,
have to be a member of the RPC.
I don't know anything about the county coalition.
Jim said we did.
They provide training to help make people a better county commissioner, and they lobby on our behalf.
I can probably go away without that.
That's where all those
Training may
emails
not-
come from.
Training's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea, but
And they lobby on our behalf, and they provide training to our staff to make our staff better, so that our staff's more efficient. I think we should keep our membership in the Florida Association of Counties.
And that's not the first item. Florida Association of Counties in the middle.
Okay, so is that the League of Cities?
the first thing is the
I'm for cutting the
association.
first one. Let's just get it, let's do this
Okay,
quickly.
okay.
Who's for cut, are we all okay with cutting the first one?
No, I want to know what
Aye.
implications there
Yeah.
will be. Can Jennifer, she may know.
Can I speak up for the health department? Of course, I think you said you were not going to cut
I
them.
don't cut them.
Okay, good.
Oh, that's
is
that's
that?
the FCC name. Okay, thank you. She said that
You're
would be
really a
less
good,
than... I'm
you're a
sorry.
big help to my office too. And although I think they're making a lot of money off of me, so that's good.
Okay.
All right, what's the implications of
What was the first one?
Jennifer here is telling me it's...
Jennifer, could you come to the mic?
You want this mic?
Just-
The first
We'll buy
one
you a
is the
mic.
FCCMA, and that one will have less implications than the Florida Association of Counties if we're cutting. There are less benefits with that first one. I think we could absorb
And that's Florida City County Manager Association.
Okay.
FCC.
Chop it?
Yes,
First one,
yes.
Say chop it?
is that
Yes.
fine with y'all?
Chop. Okay? You got that?
I'm gonna say don't cut it. It's gonna be majority here. I'm gonna say don't cut it, but
Okay,
It provides management.
Training for our new administrator.
Can I include this in my 150?
Yeah.
no.
Okay. I just want to be clear before, this is...
why not?
I'm just making sure.
Leave it up to him. That's his
Okay,
job.
all right, let's tell him what to cut. ARPC.
I think we
No.
can cut that.
I think we can cut.
Yeah, you can cut it.
Yeah.
There's no requirement to
Jennifer
have it.
shaking her head, no. Jennifer, you
You
mind?
can or not.
We can't cut that one. We're mandated by the state to
Okay.
pay it, the regional planning council.
Small County Coalition.
We cut our lobbyists, and we're currently don't have a lobbyist on staff. I think we need to continue to pay into the small county coalition so that they're able to go and advocate for the things that keep our county running. The reduction, the offsets,
Bring it on your raise then.
they got us in the RACIC, which got us more money. They have spent a great deal of effort fighting to keep state matching funds for libraries.
If they got us in the RACI program, then they earn their money on that one.
Okay.
You need to say something about
Yeah,
that?
they also, they're the organization that set up the fund to do a lot of our volunteer firefighter training.
Yeah, they
They've
get
supported us in thousands
Okay.
of dollars worth of dollars for that.
All right, next one, North Central Florida Regional Planning Council.
Never heard of them.
Never. Let's take them out.
Jennifer, what is that?
I'm not familiar with that.
All right, so we're
Well,
gonna scratch
obviously,
it.
we can cut that
Take them
one.
out.
We have to see if it's just...
Yeah, what I would like you to do in the ones we're cutting, Tim, is cut them, anticipate cutting them, but just bring a better description to our next budget hearing so we can make sure that we know all the implications of the ones we're
Cut them,
cutting.
but if we can't cut them, take them out.
CRTPA. Y'all know my feelings about that.
I think we should stay in the CRTPA.
I do too.
I would follow Mike on that.
It's,
Randy, you...
Didn't we just get the grant? Haven't we gotten grants through them? Isn't that pedestrian mobility plan grant? Wasn't
I
that?
mean,
What do you say, Randy? You're in it.
Well, there is a slight glimmer of hope that I may be able to get something out of it. I'd like to stick it with it for a while. I'm pushing to get at least one or two intersections four lane.
Okay.
That is the starting point
Is
to
this-
get on the list.
Okay, good enough.
Is this EDC Tallahassee's EDC?
Starting to get some relationships building, so maybe we can get something going.
This is the-
Tallahassee's EDC? I'd like to
Scratch it.
redirect it to Wakulla's
That's right.
EDC. We got it. So if your goal is to bring jobs, you got to invest at some point. Okay.
Why are we paying into Tallahassee's?
Oh, no, I said redirect it to Wakulla's EDC.
I'd
All
scratch
right,
it
let's
then.
move on.
Scratch it.
Scratch.
Board Association of Counties, Pat.
I think we need to keep that.
We
Yeah,
need to
keep
keep
it.
Yeah,
them.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, bring the implications of
Welfare
everything we got.
Board, is that a mandatory?
We have to do
What
that
is a
one.
welfare board?
I think that is what, I think that is mandatory.
It's tied in with the statute that requires you to send the money to the school board, the racetrack funds. Requires you to fund civil defense, 23,000, 4,000 in welfare. You have no welfare board to have it finished in how many years.
So we don't need it.
But I can guarantee you, you won't spend it.
So can we
Well,
take it
we'll
out?
take it
Can we
out.
save?
Take it out.
How we do it?
Wonderful.
It's gone.
Well, I mean, put it in reserve, I mean, whatever, but I mean, you're not gonna spend it, there is no welfare board.
We don't.
So let's budget it.
Without being rude, there was a couple of blue-haired ladies
Take it out.
that, used to run it, and they would never provide how it was spent, or any documentation whatsoever, and we finally stopped,
Okay, so we cut the welfare board.
So the blue-haired ladies are gone. All right. TMH, Trauma Center.
I think we have to pay the TMH Trauma Center. It's required.
But when's the last time they've taken the trauma center money?
I don't know about that.
Greg, could you come to the mic? I don't.
Helen,
I don't know about that.
Okay, just in case there's other questions. I don't really.
you're asleep at night, don't you?
Again, it's for public record reasons when people want to watch these things.
I'm just kidding.
I don't really care.
We had a
You're the keeper of the mic.
Yeah, it goes on the internet, so
All right, so do we need to keep TMH Trauma Center?
We'll
they-
look into that one.
they could charge us that fund. I think it's money they could bill us, and
Yeah,
they
I think they
haven't.
haven't billed us, so we haven't paid it.
But they
And we
legally
still use
are
the trauma center, as far as I know.
legally entitled to bill it.
Mosquito.
hold on a second. The
Well, what are we
TMH Trauma
saying?
Center-
Does he take that out?
Yes.
Yeah.
What now?
I was just asking what it was. It's the TMH Trauma Center in Tallahassee.
Yes, they-
What, just for my own education, what is this money? What is it supposed to be for? It's supposed to help fund
It's
it?
an in-kind contribution for the use of the trauma center. I think they get a circling counties are asked to
For the
contribute
use of it?
For the use of it, yeah.
What about like Tallahassee Regional Medical? Do they have,
They aren't a certified trauma center.
they're not a certified, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the people are going to get to go to the trauma center whether we pay it or not. They don't turn them down.
They're not going to look
they
at
haven't-
you from Crawfordville, and did you pay your money?
You guys haven't paid the trauma center in a while.
I'd look into that one then, definitely.
Okay, mosquito control, we said we were going to lower that to
Half.
18,000. And
18,000.
by the way, I asked Will about that earlier, and I don't know if was that accounted for in this? I know, was it accounted for in this?
No, when I look at the line item, I don't think we reduced it, so I'm going to go back.
So
and
that's
redo it.
another
Yep.
18,000 right there.
18.
that we're
And I just
not
want
accounted for.
to point out I've already had people
Yeah, can I
calling
comment
me
on
about that, so just
Health Department contribution,
we need to keep the same.
Soil and Water Board,
I think we have to keep the same.
We Care.
I think we should keep that the same.
What is that?
Who is that?
But
We Care is
that's specialty medical care to indigent patients, and they provide hundreds of thousands of dollars to Wakulla County citizens.
it's a nonprofit that we give $6,000 to. If you want to cut the We Care organization, I would rather have them come and do a presentation to us versus us cutting it right now.
Okay, I'm with that. Greg, you got anything to say about that?
I was going back to the Soil and Water Board. Who's Soil and Water Board?
Wakulla
Who's on it?
counties. I just actually checked this recently. We have 5 people, 5 regions. 1 seat is vacant. Joe Duggar's on it. Not Joe. Yeah, Joe Duggar. And then I forget the other names off the top of my head. But they control our soil and water. They meet quarterly. They don't. It's a voluntary position.
Then why are we paying them?
It's for their operations.
You gotta have staff. Everybody needs staff.
Well, you don't have staff at $1,000. I'm not. I assume we have to provide some sort of. It's a federally mandated board. Yeah. No one's run for it in a long time.
They are basically great volunteers.
What's going to happen if we cut it?
I don't think $1,000
Okay.
bucks, you know.
We care, we're all right with leaving We Care?
I'd like to see us leave We Care.
Okay.
What, do you want to have a presentation from or no?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Oh, Moses.
It'd be like having another corridor study.
Senior citizens contribution.
We leave that.
Yeah, I think we need to leave that.
As we've cut all this money, do you want to move it back up to $35,000? I know RH calls me regularly about his issues
I
and how
think
their
this
money
is
problems
more
are.
than generous, given our economic climate.
Okay, I was just making a
Laying
suggestion.
people off.
Agree. All right, senior citizens transportation, leave that alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sanity inquisitions, we don't have
Let's
any choice.
cut that.
Do we?
Let's cut that.
Do we have a choice?
It's a contract. I can look into it. I don't think we have a choice, but we can certainly,
We might be able to get
I
it
think
cheaper.
we're mentally, I mean, I think we're mandated to provide mental health.
Maybe we can provide
Services.
some sort of put it out to bid again and see if it comes back
It's a
cheaper.
pretty good chunk of money if there's any, I mean, it's not a huge chunk, but, you know, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, pretty soon you're talking real dollars, right? How the saying goes, so if we can get it cheaper, doing it some other way, you know, I mean, just look at it.
So as we move forward looking at next year's budget also, I don't want us to start the year with furloughs budgeted.
Well,
I'm telling you my opinion right now. I don't want next year budgeted with furloughs.
I don't want them either, but.
So I'm just, as we're making cuts, I don't want you to say I'm gonna make a cut by $8,000 by making everybody take an unpaid day.
But that's not the case right now.
I can make it.
If, I mean,
For next year, you already have furloughs budget? So, I'd rather see,
One of the things I think we may have found another dollar too. Our new administrator cannot work in the same building with his wife, I believe, if that's not correct. So that salary will probably be going away.
that's up to Tim.
Well, I don't think
Certainly an
that
area
they
we
can
look at.
work together.
The attorney's already opined on it and said that she can't work anywhere that, under him, in any building. So that-
I'd suggest we let Tim handle that.
Okay, I agree, but it's potential
We told him to
savings.
cut 150, let's let him figure it
and
out.
I've had that conversation with Tim somewhat. I just want to give y'all, I'm going to share my view on it with everybody. I do anticipate that Laura will be leaving our office. I think we might be able to hire a receptionist at a lower salary than we're paying her, because I
High schooler, get an OPS,
right.
high schooler.
That was going to be the point I was getting ready to make. Was I don't think that we should outright not budget a position to greet people at the door.
I don't think we should micromanage, but I'm sure he can find somebody to answer the phones.
Our current staff, and the fact that I anticipate us probably losing a couple staff positions, requiring them to do the additional answering the phones and dealing with the public. Well, we all love the public, but sometimes the public comes in and wants to talk to you for 2 hours. Having somebody who just talks to them
They don't want to talk to me too much.
is something we might want. I'd like to see us try and keep someone in a reduced salary or benefits in that position. Maybe a nice retired person.
Okay, can we move on to let the public talk, and then we'll
Tim, you got
wrap
clear
it up?
enough?
Well, I just want to be clear on my direction marching forward, so everybody here is all on the same page with me, so we're not having issues because there's not another meeting before the budget's due. So I'm cutting $150,000 off the 409, which is going to leave $259 left.
Hold on,
Amongst
Tim.
the constitutionals to come up.
Donnie, can you elbow that lady to your right and?
Is that my understanding?
I'm just kidding. I just said to elbow you because he's, anyway.
Summarizing, Cheryl.
Okay. I want to make sure you hear this.
All right, let me back up one second. What about the contributions we just, line item, vetoed, basically? Is that cut 150, add that to it,
That's right.
all right, and that reduces their cuts they're gonna need to make?
That's correct.
Is that everybody's understanding?
That's correct.
So we're actually gonna be cutting like 155 or whatever it is.
No, it's going to be, we will probably eliminate 20,000 there.
So we're actually cutting 170. Is that your understanding? I mean, we're all on the same page?
Roughly.
The 150 is getting harder to fill, though, so I mean, yes.
Yeah, you're strangleholding him.
No, if that's not the case, then that's not the case. If it's 150 and he gets 25 from cuts, then he only needs to cut 125.
No. He's got 150 to cut. These things here are just on and above our 150. These are not in county office.
Was that your understanding?
They're in our budget, so if I've got to cut these and 150, it's going to be 170.
I want to do the 150 plus these.
Okay, is that what you want to do?
No.
Okay.
but I'm just one person, so what do you want to do, Alan?
I'd like to see, I think you should aim to cut the 150 plus these. I look forward to hearing what you bring back. If you can't, you have in the same way that I anticipate some of our constitutionals coming back saying, I managed to cut 1% and I couldn't cut 3, I think you should aim to cut the 150 plus these. Some of which I'm not sure we
had the 150 before we started on these.
Because again, I'm anticipating an increase in library. Just putting it out there.
If you say library again, I'm going to start preaching that cut it.
What if Tim's knife is right there on the edge of the library, and he says, boy, if Alan had said I had to take these cuts, I wouldn't have to cut the library.
I'm not going to do that, but
I've told him to come
I just
back
want
tired of hearing library.
And my point is, I really don't care what we got. I just want to get to, so they know the number that they need to get to, that I'm going to be breaking out a percentage by. So we're not in conflict.
So basically,
everybody, all 5 of us know what we need to get to.
Out of the board budget, you're going to cut roughly 170. 150 of that being
Yes.
cuts, 20 of that roughly being contributions we're not going to make.
Line item, item.
Is that clear enough for everybody?
I'm not saying, I was going to mention again that as we move forward, that I mentioned it earlier, we may need to put money towards the roads department to avoid having a shortfall and just make sure that our budget, we didn't put that in consideration last year, was part of the problem we had this year. If we need to, I know you're working out contracts and things.
That's where we have a reserve fund.
All right, I think we got everything clear. Was that part clear enough? Can you do that?
I can certainly try. I mean, like I said, the hill's getting higher, but I can certainly try to cut
Just don't put no
170,000
more.
on top of 617 is going to be quite a feat. But it's probably going to be people going home now. So
Yes, he'll send you an email with those numbers, right?
That's what we're doing right now.
Or you want to tell them right now
and
what
that's
number?
kind of where I want to be, because I don't want it to be subjective as to what that percentage is going to be. So maybe
Okay, well, tell us
do
what
we need
they
to
are
figure
right
that
now.
out now? Can we just say 170? If that's what we want to get to, we'll cut 170, and then the rest is constitutional.
Okay.
Yes.
Minus-
Of course, we got the flex plan in there too. So you haven't looked at, the flex plan contributes to that too. We went
Well,
from
there's two ways to look at this. I mean, if we cut the flex plans, that's in the board's budget.
to 2,500.
I mean, we need to make up our minds. If we're going to tell them to cut the board's budget by 150, in my opinion, if 20 of that came from contributions we don't give, then he only needs to cut 120. I mean, these are going to be saving some people's jobs anyways. That's just my opinion. If changing the flex plan comes out of the administrative budget, and that saves 50,000,
Then he's closer.
then he's closer. That's my opinion. That's not what you said.
Now, that is what I said.
Well,
Y'all been preaching going above the 150 with all this stuff. I'm
that's
saying...
not what you said. Somebody said it besides Jerry.
I said,
go above.
You
did.
said it.
I did.
All right. Can we change that, if you mind, and just say Tim's goal is 150? If he gets there by not contributing, if he gets there by a flex plan cut, good for him. That's
I
two
don't care
people
how
we
he
don't
does
have to
it.
fire.
I don't care how he does it.
Is that all right with you?
No, yeah.
Okay.
And Tim, and
150, Tim,
Say the L word.
I was just going to say, I anticipate talking with you one-on-one
about the library.
about
the library.
about what programs I think we should not cut.
Okay. So then at least
Plaque
259
on the wall in the library.
pretty much 630 for that a percentage we'll give the constitutionals.
Okay, you gonna tell us what those numbers are?
Without cutting Buddy.
I don't think.
Without cutting Buddy, right?
Yes.
So that's going to be. Tell
I
you
don't
what,
think he can.
We'll take Buddy's head. At $6,000. What is it? $6,000. We'll take Buddy's head.
Okay.
Is that fair? I mean.
Yeah, so
okay.
we'll let the citizens talk, and can you be crunching those numbers so we can give these constitutions their real number?
Are we basing it on percentage of budget like Commissioner Merritt did, or are we basing on?
I'd budget on the number, the dollar figure. 409 minus 150,
It's 259, right?
and then distribute it out by the percentage. What percentage of the budget do they spend?
For that same formula there.
That's what I would say. That's just my opinion.
So you don't like my numbers?
No.
I just don't know if your numbers are going to work, Commissioner, now that we've changed the game.
Okay, that's fine.
They're basically the same.
I'm okay. All right, Howard Kessler.
Thank you, Commissioners, and appreciate the really good discussion. So I'll preface by saying, history has a tendency to repeat itself, and we should be learning from it. And even though you decided to do this across-the-board thing, there were budgets that weren't cut while others were in the past years, and now we're starting to cut across the board. So not all budgets are equal, and one size does not fit all a lot of times, but I can understand you're working to that goal, but I guess I can agree with statements of Commissioner Brock with that respect. I just wanted to, before I go on, does this budget as proposed right now keep the fire and EMS in county?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted clarification. I wasn't sure on that. In regard to the library, I'd urge you to not be penny-wise and pound foolish. It really is going to be disastrous to start cutting that library budget. And I haven't rehearsed this with Commissioner
That's twice
Brock.
you said it, Howard.
Yeah, I worry about privatization of our additional government services, and privatization, the bottom line is making a profit. It comes at the expense of the consumer. Your decision to keep WeCare, I applaud you. It's as Commissioner Ott says, our county benefits extremely by this. These are specialties that our citizens would not have access to in many times. Yeah, if they were in a severe auto wreck and they're laying on the side of the road, TMH, the trauma center, would take them. WeCare would follow them up or do the elective surgeries on them. But I think we have an obligation of carrying some of that weight and not being a deadbeat. So we're benefiting a multiple of times more than other counties for what we're receiving from what we contribute. The same thing as the senior center. If we did not have the senior center, I think we have a moral obligation and a duty to our citizens to have provided some similar facility for our seniors. And the senior center is providing that, and I think we have an obligation to continue that funding. So I enjoyed watching and listening to the discussion on the budget. It all comes down to making those, it's terrible, but when you don't have the revenue coming in, you have to make the cuts. And again, I appreciate your discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Charles Hickman? And you're going to speak on, you can go ahead and talk about both things, sir. You put two cards in.
Yes, I did, and you negated the use of one of those cards.
Good.
Because you went through the list as I was doing, so...
Just don't say they all work.
Well, unfortunately...
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I do want to bring up the library on one aspect, and I don't know if anyone's considering it. What you have is assets sitting in a library that right now is running without one of the air conditioners. I don't know if any of you have ever been into a building, I have, been into a building that has been condemned due to mold, and part of it was a library. If that is not climate controlled and that library is not maintained, you're going to be wasting CDs, VCRs. You may as well just go ahead and throw them out now or put them up for sale, because they will go. And if you start cutting too much into the library budget, then you've got an issue there with some fixed assets that will deteriorate. Just an observation, but it seems to me like that's one area of the county that's getting an awful lot of use and a lot of benefit to the citizens, and I have a hard time with that one. So it's a consideration I think needs to be built into the budget. Maybe even collecting some of the computers, some of the electronics that may not be used throughout the entire county if we're going to be cutting back on staff, and put them in proper storage.
Okay. Can I ask him a question real quick? The AC, main part of the library are older, but they're working. I mean,
They're
trust the
both-
ladies would tell me if they were hot in there. I'm unaware of any of our ACs that are not working right now.
Is it maybe because we're having it at 76 degrees, right, Scott? Maybe it
Yeah,
seems a little warmer?
We do have in our meeting rooms, I mean, especially when it's not being used, it's bumped up a little bit. And I'll admit, I will bump it down, like last night, we had 60 people in there for a program, so I'll do what I need to do a little bit to make them comfortable, but our ACs are working. I mean,
All of your ACs at this time are working.
Public donations. I mean,
Okay.
I'm in there every day.
The last report,
The ladies that they're not,
the last report I got is you had one air conditioning unit that was out.
well, I will be the first to know, sir. And
Okay.
the ACs in the main part of the library are the same ACs that were there when it was in IGA, and yes, they could do with replacing. But as far as is the building being cooled and climate controlled right now, yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that straight.
Gail Hickman?
I want no furloughs for the library. I understand that some departments aren't subject to furloughs, and some are, depending on what department that you are. The library was selected for furloughs. You create hard feelings between county employees when you have some that have furloughs and some don't have furloughs. The library needs your help, not furloughs. Here's my solution. There are positions that are no longer needed in the county because of maybe the usage, such as planning or whatever, the usage is not there. We need to lay off those people. We need to put budgeting back under the clerk. I think 100 years ago it might have been there. We do not need to replace Lindsay. It's hard to say you're going to be laid off to somebody that exists and has a job, but she's left. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Bob Crane?
Good evening, Commissioners. I've been in the county for almost 6 years, and tonight you have impressed me. We're at a situation where I don't envy your positions. You have got to pull some really big rabbits out of the backside, and you've done a fantastic job, and I say it for this reason. You have strong convictions and beliefs. And the reason I'm impressed is out of all the times I've been to a county commission meeting, this is the first time I've been here where I've seen such strong convictions still phrased, but respectfully. That to me says we're going to make it through this. There's no admonishments for past mistakes, but what can we do to solve the problem now? There will be no easy solutions to our problems, but if what I see tonight is any indication, I got a lot more hope in the future than what I've seen in past commissions. And I wanted to thank you for all your work, because I know you're not going to be very popular in the county for the next year or two. So, better you than me, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Never been popular.
You never will.
Need to go get on a boat somewhere.
I didn't like it the first time I saw you, but anyway.
Maybe you can take some of that extra money we got and go get a haircut.
Anyway, all right, so, I'm sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
There were two things I wanted to say when we're finished with this discussion, so.
Okay, so are we where we need to be, everybody okay? Okay.
Next year is going to be tougher.
And
I would like Tim, though, wherever he was at. You don't need, anywhere, of course, along the year we can look, like if we can improve the ambulance billing, of course. Just, I know it's a long way to think ahead, but we need, the revenues are only going to go down next year, so.
we talked about that. Hopefully soon we're going to come with a agenda item to talk about possibilities of privatizing collections and some other things, and doing maybe, I mean, we got to do some drastic things.
And I would like to move forward with examining the MSBU for ambulance. I think that if nothing else, distributes the cost of it so everybody pays, not just property owners paying a disproportionate amount because they have a nicer house.
I'd like to move to just ahead to put it on the agenda, on the ballot to have the
It
voters.
doesn't need to go with balance.
No, I'm talking about.
The
I
1
like
cent
that.
one, okay.
I like that idea. I think, because everybody that passes through our county contributes. They go stop at Walmart and pay.
It would hurt to ask the voters.
Is that a sales tax?
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody pays.
1
Part-timers,
cent sales
people passing through the county.
It's like your 1 cent sales
Now,
tax.
the negative, the downside of that may be is when we go to renew our 1 cent sales tax for road paving, people may say,
We'll have to
I'm
fight
already
that
paying
battle.
1 cent, you know what I mean?
I misread that. I would like to just put,
We haven't done anything.
okay.
I just talked.
There are two EMS revenue sources you've discussed. One is 125.271. It's the assessment, basically the benefit assessment. You could do that for next fiscal year. It cannot be on the tax bill. The second is the new 1% sales surtax. That could be for fire and EMS that the legislature has authorized. That has to go to referendum approval. That referendum approval, the earliest you could do that is next year's ballot.
I'd like to see us move forward with the MSBU assessment and then maybe not plan on collecting it until the year after when it can be put on the tax bills.
Do we have
I don't know if there's a way to do that, but we need to think ahead to next budget year.
Do we, for the fire MSBU, we had to do a study? Do we need to do a study for the EMS MSBU?
Yeah, and I actually turned in an agenda item to give you information on the EMS assessment. It'll be under July 18th. I turned that in this morning.
Heather, can we do the study or do we have to pay somebody to do the study?
I don't know
Liability
if
makes
you
it better.
have the expertise on staff to do that. It's technical.
Show me somebody
and-
else's study, I can do it. I mean, all I can do is copy it. You know what I mean? I mean, the methodology is sound, right? It's
And
just
I'm-
different numbers.
Liability is to pay somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, you prefer to have an outside expert witness. who's-
Liability, protect yourself too.
I mean, I'm redoing the impact fee study.
Same.
All right.
When you bring, so with your agenda item, are you going to have on there as one of the options that we could move forward with doing the study and move forward with?
It's an informational item. You guys
like it's
can
mine.
provide whatever direction you want from that. I did tell you what we would
Okay.
recommend as
I
far
just wanted
as
to make sure that we
steps.
had some options.
Got numbers. You got some numbers, Tim, for us, and then we'll let Lynn talk.
Do you want to, we have a,
You know, I'm taking that for so this is no longer a true number. These numbers do not work when you take out 36%. You can figure out.
Give me a piece of paper. Give me a piece of paper. I'll just use my calculator.
You're going to still have percentage budget.
No. We got a prorate buddy, 0, right?
Right.
Cut out, cut out.
thanks, everybody. We really appreciate all your help.
See, this is, that's 100%, where you get this out. And then you only have 62%.
Fine, man, keep it fine. That's what I said, we'll do it. Let's not worry about it. No, don't worry about it.
We'll get the number and send it out. You get everybody on board. That's okay.
Yeah. That's fine. I was fine with that to start with.
We'll email it tomorrow or
Okay.
we'll email it out and everybody.
Lynn?
Yeah, two things. First, the Energy Committee had its initial meeting, and I was very excited by the expertise of some of the people who were there. And so even though it's not in this budget at all, I'm optimistic that that committee is actually going to work to help reduce our energy expenditures, starting first with buildings and then moving on from there. So the other thing, I don't know, I know that there's an administrator salary that was in this budget. I don't know what it is, and negotiations are starting. And I just wanted to put the idea that I had in my when I had suggestions for the process, there were some suggestions for administrator payments that I wanted to just throw out there for consideration as you're moving forward with negotiations. And I really like the idea of incentives or bonuses or whatever for performance. And the attorney didn't say we couldn't do it, but when I submitted that list. So just as an example, if our new administrator can reduce our energy expenditures by $100,000, then he'd get a $10,000 bonus. or if our administrator can bring in X amount of new grant funds, then he'd get a $5,000 bonus, or, just things like that. And so when you're considering the salary negotiations, I had mentioned at the other meeting, start at the minimum, but have some performance-based bonuses, incentives, or whatever that communicate some areas where we want to see some improved efficiencies, productivity cuts, or whatever. So,
One more question. Tim, in this budget, did you build in a new energy-efficient air conditioner for the board office, or is that just, you have a general maintenance fund and you don't delineate that stuff like that?
We're going to try to get it out of what we've got budgeted in maintenance and repairs for facilities management. It's kind of the big thing that we have, but I mean, I
don't want to get into too much detail, Mr. Arch, but that thing will probably pay for itself in 2 years.
It would. It's probably got a C of 8.
It's running on heat strips in the wintertime.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. You don't want that.
the Energy Committee will be looking at all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah, because that's a issue we've heard with several of our old buildings. We haven't been very proactive in fixing things. We usually wait for them to break and become reactive. So
we just haven't had a whole lot of money
Right.
to dump into our So, and unfortunately, our facilities maintenance is
But we can use
lacking.
1 cent sales or 1 cent and some of that building impact fee money that's laying out there. You can't use it?
No, that's not for repair and maintenance.
Can 1 cent sales tax on buildings. We need to look into that.
We can use excess jail bed revenue.
Okay. Any more discussion? Thank the public for coming.
Thank you.
Constitutional officers, we thank y'all, and
Has it always been this easy?
no.
Okay.
they're going to email you in the morning.
Say we're going to get those emailed to you.
Well, it'll be CC'd to everybody.
But it should be less than these numbers I quoted. Okay, they're going to be not less than what I quoted.
Yes. Connie.